Less than a week after the launch of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, we received word from its developer Koei Tecmo. The game sold more than 3 million copies at launch, which is not only the most for any Warriors game lifetime sales to date, but also for context is 3 times more than the early Switch title Mario Odyssey's first 5 days at 1.1 million. And for Zelda specifically, this is absolutely phenomenal because it's more copies sold in the launch weekend for a Zelda spin-off than some mainline Zelda releases received in their lifetime. Zelda Spirit Tracks, the Minish Cap, Triforce Heroes, all less lifetime than Age of Calamity's first few days. And even the original releases of Majora's Mask as well as Skyward Sword were just a bit over 3 million. Needless to say, there's a goldmine that Nintendo has just started to tap into here, and it doesn't stop at Zelda. It's the concept of Nintendo franchise spin-offs that actually fit into the canon and styling of the IP. And if I were in charge of Nintendo, then they're only getting started. Let's talk about it. The first part of the conversation is obviously, what did Age of Calamity do so right? Obviously, it has something that the original title may not have banked on. Of course, the original launched over on the Wii U and still sold 1 million on their lifetime, which for a Wii U title isn't bad. But there's certainly a different fervor with which Zelda fans want to play Age of Calamity than the original. I mentioned it in the intro, but I think it largely comes down to the game's context and presentation. Ultimately, any game could probably be broken down to some wireframes interacting with some other wireframes with various coats of paint. So the mechanics of one Warriors game doesn't necessarily differ that wildly from another, but Age of Calamity wins me over as a Zelda fan who doesn't care about this specific game genre because of the story, even if it ends up being a bit shallow, which I'm only 6 hours in, so I don't even know yet, and it gives context and motivation to something I'm already interested in. Compare this with the first Hyrule Warriors, which is obviously a well-appreciated game, but definitely leans into fan service rather than an actual story with weight and significance. This was also a bit the downfall of Fire Emblem Warriors. Obviously, lots of people enjoyed it quite a bit, and it was fun for Fire Emblem fans to see Chrom and Marth and Camilla in HD and sharing a world together. But like with Hyrule Warriors, even as someone who hasn't played the game, it's obvious that the world is strung together for the main purpose of trying to make some kind of sense of these characters coexisting. I would actually think a new Fire Emblem Warriors that takes place in the lineage of 3 houses, for example, would actually be better received today by a lot of people. And the last thing I'll say about Age of Calamity is that the presentation itself goes a long way to grounding us in the world that we've already invested in. The art style is identical to Breath of the Wild. Voice actors are the same, and stuff like collectibles, weapons, armor, and even the sound effects all allow the player to feel like you're experiencing this world again, just with a different playstyle and new playable characters. So with that in mind, here are a bunch of ideas for spin-off games Nintendo could pursue that I think would be able to well expand their lore, interest the current fan bases, and possibly introduce even more new people to their series than are already invested. And as we go over these, go ahead and write your ideas in the comment section. We'll grab a couple of those to talk about on our podcast this Saturday on our podcast channel, youtube.com/directly to you. If you haven't, please consider going over there and subscribing so we can cross a big milestone before the end of this year. Let's start with Splatoon Tactics. First off, it was lightly teased early in the year that we'd get a new Splatoon announcement in 2020, but obviously 2020 happened, so that seems to have been pushed back. I personally doubt this is for Splatoon 3, as I'd expect that to come on the Nintendo Swap, not so soon on the Nintendo Switch, although anything is possible. And I'm not saying the tease will be for this kind of game, but I do hope and suspect it'll actually be for a spin-off. This idea for Splatoon Tactics I think would do really well to be produced by Nintendo, but developed by Davide Soliani's team at Ubisoft, who was responsible for Mario + Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Not only did that game also do a great job at building a relatively believable spin-off world, but its XCOM-style gameplay is a great template for what I'd like to see here. A huge factor of a tactics game like this would be the ability to diversify movesets across characters, and with all the different weapons up Splatoon's arsenal, that wouldn't be a problem at all. Characters could specialize in umbrellas, chargers, dualies, rollers, shooters, sloshers, splatters, or anything else. Of course, this would have to take place somewhere in the official timeline, and I would either say it could be a prequel around when Captain Cuttlefish and DJ Octavio are growing up, or could even be the next story beat after Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 ended with the Chaos versus Order Splatfest and Chaos won. What if this game focused on a future world of chaos in this tactical RPG style? The other thing this kind of release would succeed at is bringing in people like me to Splatoon. I'm not really a fan of shooters, so I just haven't played the games, even though I'd love to be invested in this really cool world. And yeah, I know it's a different kind of shooter and all that, but that's not the point. So a game in this world, but with gameplay I find more approachable, may actually interest me and others like me enough that I would pick up Splatoon 2 or 3 after the fact. Animal Crossing is obviously one of the most popular franchises right now, whether you would have believed that this time last year or not. New Horizons has sold over 25 million copies and isn't slowing down anytime soon. But although people play that game together, and it was even surprisingly nominated for Best Multiplayer Game this year at the Game Awards, it really could stand to do a lot more to actually allow a proper multiplayer experience. So I'd suggest a true, well-developed Animal Crossing party, but with a better name. This would be nothing at all like Amiibo Festival because it wouldn't use Amiibo and also wouldn't be a terrible game. But if I'm being honest, we all know that a party game around this franchise could do phenomenally if it was of even moderate quality. I'd say hand this one off to ND Cube, but with supervision from the Animal Crossing team. Boards could be small islands or town centers based off of each of the mainline games. And during setup, everyone gets to design their character's skin, hair, eyes, and all that in the same way that you pick your car parts and settings in Mario Kart. Just something quick that gives you a feeling of control and individuality. But in that selection, you can also pick 2 animal villagers that'll each make your playstyle a little bit different. One of them sets which dice you have, and the other gives one small ability. Then the rest plays out much like one of the good Mario parties, with minigames, yelling, and disowning your friends and family, with some Animal Crossing flair thrown in there. Like, the games are about painting a picture, building a house, chopping a tree, copying a room's design, and so on. I think one of the main things with spin-offs is they kind of already have to be thriving franchises, which is why Federation Force was kind of a bad idea at the time. I wanted to say that because that's why I'm not mentioning something like F-Zero. That needs a couple more modern mainline games before it should veer off course. But a recent addition to Nintendo's IPs to do as well as it has is Xenoblade. And it's been said before, but this would be yet another great candidate to turn into the next Warriors-style game. Just take a look, especially at the first game. It's got tons of war scenes as it is. The first 2 games are related in story, but already somewhat loosely, and this title would absolutely be able to realistically bring the 2 together in one timeline where the cast of both games can be represented in one title. Shulk, Rex, Pyra, Dunban, and all the rest fighting alongside each other in battle would be something fans of this series would absolutely go for. And especially in a world after Age of Calamity, I think there would be plenty of people who enjoy the gameplay loop of that game and are willing to try it in a new franchise if Xenoblade were willing to do it. I'm not going to give my exact story ideas because they'd be a bit of spoilers, but this one would be great. Nothing else to it. And actually, maybe Monolith could be helping on a game just like this soon. AJ just made a video this week about everything Monolith Soft could have in the works for 2021, so check that out after you're done with this one.
Parker really thought he'd get away with Pokemoning on my nerd video with no repercussions. Not on my watch. I'm gonna Pokemon like ain't nobody ever Pokemon before. For revenge, obviously. Some of you may know that I'm not usually all that big on the Warriors games. The over-the-top power fantasy mowing through huge mobs of flimsy enemies just doesn't do for me when I'm sure it does for fans of that franchise. But even more of you likely know that all of that can go straight out of the window if Pokemon is involved. And if you think I haven't put any thought into what I want out of a Pokemon Warriors game despite not liking that style of gameplay, well, you don't know me at all, do you? It's actually pretty straightforward given a popular part of Pokemon lore, a literal war that is referenced in multiple Pokemon games. Of course, we never get a full breakdown of what that war was and all of the details on why it happened. All we know is that it did happen, possibly multiple times, and I think that is the perfect justification for Pokemon Company to work with Koei Tecmo to tell that story through the Warriors framework, just like they did with the Age of Calamity collaboration to tell the story of the lead up to Breath of the Wild. And some may think that Pokemon Company might be afraid to involve Pokemon in something like that, but I mean, they already have a full game about Pokemon being used in war, Pokemon Conquest for Nintendo DS, so what's one more game? As far as how the Pokemon Warriors game would work on a gameplay level, I think they could take a page from Smash's book and use the concept of switching Pokemon in battle as part of the way they could set this apart from other Warriors Warriors games, and much like the aforementioned Pokemon Conquest, involved the trainers in the gameplay too. Each trainer would have 1 to 3 Pokemon depending on their status in terms of whether they're a leader or a grunt of some sort, and you would not only need to switch between your Pokemon, but also occasionally from your Pokemon to your trainer as well. Not to have the humans fight with Pokemon or even with each other, but as a delivery method for healing and stat buffs that could be earned by performing well. It'd still mostly be a Warriors game that I think the main appeal would be the narrative it could tell, but I think gameplay like that could be an extra bonus for Pokemon fans. As usual, I will stop myself here because I could go on and on even about this, but I need time to tell you guys that I will be streaming some pre-release gameplay for Immortals Fenyx Rising tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Come hang out with me on our Twitch account, twitch.tv/fanatixfour, and you'll be able to earn some exclusive in-game bonuses through way of their Twitch extension that I'll have in the stream.
It's hard to say exactly how much of a success this franchise is right now, but Pikmin also absolutely deserves a spin-off. Of course, we got Hey Pikmin on the 3DS, but like no one really liked that from what I hear, so just ignore it, I guess. A genre that I think would fit the Pikmin IP really well is some kind of difficult puzzle game. Obviously, as a sorta RTS, Pikmin definitely has puzzle elements already, but while waiting for Pikmin 4, it should really lean into that genre. For this, I'm imagining a game the size of Box Boy and Box Girl, or Part-Time UFO, or Snipper Clips. Could be developed in partnership with HAL Laboratory since they developed the first 2 of those. And as a puzzle game, I could see it either going the route of a block puzzler like Puzzle League, but with specific Pikmin mechanics of telling them to move blocks around the board, or using blocks to open paths for them to walk through and do tasks. Otherwise, I honestly would say a game kinda similar to Hey Pikmin, just better executed, where puzzles are actually difficult and well designed, which seemed to be the downfall of that first game. A 2D puzzle platformer with challenge behind it could fit Pikmin quite well. Lastly, the most straightforward of the bunch, it's time for a Mushroom Kingdom Warriors game. Of course, we get plenty of Mario spin-offs already, so this one wouldn't be for the purpose of expanding the IP, but just of making something fun. And I would say that I don't know how Nintendo would feel about making a game where Mario is just blatantly fighting a bunch of enemies, but if we look at Smash, then I guess we don't have to worry about that anymore. The cast of interesting characters is absolutely there. Off the top of my head, Mario, Peach, Rosalina, Captain Toad, Yoshi, Waluigi, bring back Geno, Wart, and everyone else. The strong thing going here too is whereas other franchise would need some solid story tie-in, that's pretty contrary to how Mario has operated since inception anyway, so it doesn't even matter. This could be the most generic tale of Mario and co. fighting against Bowser and his minions just because Bowser is trying to invade the Mushroom Kingdom. Honestly, that's so boring, but seeing it from the perspective of a Warriors game would be fun because we honestly would love to have a better idea of the weight of a grandiose battle in a game like this. Bowser has an army. How come we only ever fight a couple of small enemies at a time in a single file line? You know what I mean? But that's what I think. What do you think? What spin-off ideas do you have for any of these franchises? Or what about Kirby, Donkey Kong, Star Fox, or Metroid? Let me know all that and more in the comment section below. And like I said, we'll take some of those comments, talk about them on our podcast this weekend. Head over there if you would. And then while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to Fanatixfour for more videos like this every Tuesday and Thursday from me and AJ. And that's all I've got for today. Happy Thanksgiving if you're watching it the day of. If not, happy Thanksgiving next year. Have a blessed day. See you next time.